Handelman. This is our very special guest tonight, guys, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying. The president and the founder of the Off the Leash Productions.
That's it.
Thank you for coming by, Jeremy.
Thrilled to be here.
Oh my God, I'm so cold. I don't know if I'm not gonna be able to speak now because I'm so cold. And guys, I forgot to go to the bathroom right before we started. It's a little too late. Oh my God, what day is today? Friday, May the 20th. It's my husband's birthday. I want to say happy birthday to my baby Joey. He's 45, 47, 46. 45?
Don't ask me.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going number, but happy birthday, baby. I want to give just one word to our sponsors, the Micos. By the way, I need more coffee. The best Italian coffee, the Micos. Okay, Madonia's Brothers Bakery, Your Health Vitamins, and of course, I'm wearing Caterina Lankova, guys. Look, I have a tiger here, okay? I don't know if we can get it. I don't want to get up, but look at that. Can you see it, Jeremy?
Yep.
Yeah, you see what I do to show the tiger? Look at what I have to go through. Okay, this is power, guys. Okay, going back to camera, Gloria, you can go up. So you wouldn't show my boobs. Great, awesome. Okay, so pretty much, Jeremy, I was doing my homework, getting ready for this interview, going through your website. And the number thing that I wanted to ask you first, the Off the Leash Productions. Off the Leash, where is that name coming from? What's the story behind that name?
The short story on that was about 10 years ago when I first started doing video production in terms of my own business. One of the things that I had the idea of doing, which I ended up really doing very little of, was the idea of putting together pet videos. People are crazy about their pets. They'll spend all kinds of money on their pets. So why not put together a montage of old photos of their pets, maybe some video clips, set them to music, and do all of that. So when I went out to market that, I thought, you know, what kind of name should I market it under? Because pet video just sounds kind of boring. So I came up with the name of Off the Leash Productions. And I loved the name so much because it really connotes, you know, sort of unhindered creativity.
Right, it was really catchy too.
And I just love the name. So even though the pet video thing, you know, I probably did 3 of them and that was it. But I love the name and I've used that name ever since. And since I moved into theater, I continue to use, you know, the same name.
Okay,
so,
interesting. You've been around. In radio,
yeah.
TV, you worked for CBS for how many years?
13 years.
13 years. I mean, you got plenty of experience, and we're going to talk about that. How you made that transition. Sure. You know, if we can go back to the beginning. You know, as a radio announcer, TV, and now stage work and film. Right.
Yeah, well, quite a difference. I mean, I basically attribute it to a sign that somebody pasted to a tree freshman year when I was in college. I was a biology major.
Biology too. Right, yeah. Oh God, I can't believe it. So you're a scientist too.
Well, I was thinking about being in field research and biology. You know, living in treetops and writing articles for National Geographic, that sort of thing. And the sign freshman year was just for an activity. People interested in volunteering for the college radio station. There was a meeting Tuesday night. I thought, oh, that might be a fun thing to do. I didn't even know the school had a college radio station until I got there. Wow. It wasn't something I was looking at as a career. I just was doing it for fun. And for 4 years, I basically got involved being one of the sportscasters, you know, on my college radio station, and had a blast doing it. Still wasn't thinking about it as a career, but by the time my senior year was kind of wrapping up, I realized, you know,
do this.
You know, this is, I really enjoy this. I was passionate about it. And the biology was still an interest, but the radio had become a passion. And, you know, you're coming out of college, you don't have really having responsibilities to other people at that point. And I just thought, if I'm going to do it, now's the time to do it. So I basically packed up my car and drove around New York State because I knew there were a ton of little radio stations. And I figured if I walked in the door and they had an opening, they would talk to me. And that's how I got my first radio job.
Isn't that incredible? Yeah. What about the TV? How that came to your life?
Well, basically, I was bit by the bug of broadcasting. So while I was doing radio, I loved it. I loved that medium. But as an on-air person, I didn't necessarily see myself doing that forever. But I still wanted to be in that field. So I decided that, well, maybe I should get in on the business side of broadcasting. The typical route for doing that in those days was by working through ad sales. Wasn't really what I wanted to spend my time doing at that point. So I made a rather uninformed and rash decision to get the one degree I never had any intention of getting in my life. No disrespect intended, but was an MBA in marketing.
Okay, right. You're a media marketing as well.
Which I wanted to get at a major college in a major market. So I ended up at NYU in New York. And that led to my meeting someone who was an adjunct professor at the school. I didn't have him as a teacher, but he was starting up a network marketing services department at CBS. And so it's a much longer story, but the short version is I eventually, applied to his department and got that job, and that sort of started me in the CBS path.
Incredible. So tell me a little bit about those CBS years.
Well, yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, it was, where I started was a great place to start. This marketing services unit gave me a broad exposure to the whole range of the business and working very, very closely with the ad sales department, which is, it's where the revenue comes from.
Right.
That drives the business. But also in conjunction with the different day parts, primetime, daytime, sports, news, et cetera. So you were getting familiar with all of it and working a lot with the ratings. From there, I moved on to the research department, servicing both the sales department and the sports department as a director of sales and sports research, and that opened me up to sports programming.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily join CBS with the intention of going into sports.
Right.
I've always been a big sports fan.
Yeah.
I started to see that as a natural place for me to go. So I ended up in CBS Sports and was there basically for 9 years. Left there as a vice president of sports programming.
Wow, that's a long time, 13 years.
It's a long time, yeah, but you know what? It's been more than 13 years since I left, so it's...
Right, time goes so fast.
It really does.
And how you make that transition, Jeremy? Like what you're doing now, theater production, I mean, when was the day that you said, I'm going to this direction now? Do you remember when you made that decision?
Yeah, well, it kind of evolved in a couple of ways. When I left CBS, I knew that I wanted to do something that was more personally creative.
Okay.
I mean, I was around brilliant people, and I loved working with the people that I worked with, but in a management role. And I really felt I wanted to do something that was a little bit more
creative
for me, but I didn't know what that was because I really hadn't done that.
I see, okay.
And it wasn't until I left that I started exploring. And the first thing I started exploring was writing. And suddenly
you're a playwright as well.
Yeah, I mean, first I wrote a screenplay, which nothing happened with it, but it was kind of what I call my, my master's in writing was learning to write a screenplay.
Okay.
Got into a few places.
What's the name of it?
That was called, what was the name of that?
That's okay. It will come to you.
It was basically a tobacco industry subject matter, and real life events tended to supersede what was actually happening as I was writing. It was kind of a fascinating period back when all of the heads of tobacco were being brought in front of the Senate committees and stuff like that.
Yeah, the insider came to me for a moment.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, basically, those movies started to go into the pipeline. Well, here was, rookie screenwriter who was working on something that he had started before any of that, but there was no way I could compete, with that. But it got me writing.
Right.
It got me to the point where I was able to finish a script, do a reading, make changes, and then put it out there. And sometimes the hardest thing isn't the writing part; it's the putting it out there for some people.
Right.
But I was, perfectly good about doing that. And so I was doing other things to earn money. I was doing consulting work. To pay the bills tied to my former work, and I was getting involved with a lot of the new online stuff, which was just getting off the ground at that point, kind of like the teacher staying a chapter ahead of the students. But I was still writing, and I was devoting a certain portion of that time. And at some point, there was an idea that actually a childhood friend of mine had just sort of glibly. It wasn't really the idea for the plot. It was simply something where he said, you should write the quintessential, Bronx play or movie or something like that. Yeah, just, because that's where I grew up as a little kid. And, maybe 2 years later, that little seed germinated in my mind into an idea for a story.
Right.
And as that story started to take its shape, and as characters started to emerge, in my head in terms of what this could be, I thought, this really should be a play. And I had no idea how to write a play. I love theater. I always, went to a lot of theater, but it wasn't that I was pointing myself in that direction. And then I just said, well, this needs to be a play. And so that became, how I learned to write a play. And that was the play which was called The Bronx Bombers, B-A-L-M-E-R-S.
Okay.
Which was a story of a very strong matriarchal woman in the late 60s in the Bronx. As the neighborhood's changing rapidly, people are leaving the city and the Bronx in particular, and she's desperately, through whatever means, devious and otherwise possible, trying to keep her friends and family in this little community in the Bronx. And that was the play.
Interesting.
And that was really how I got involved in theater. And when I decided, in a moment of total insanity, to actually produce it myself,
Interesting, total insanity. I like that. Yeah. I like it because you have to be insane to some degree.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
Right?
there was no logical reason to like suddenly say, I think I'm going to go produce a show. And even then, I wasn't looking to produce as a career. It was more about getting my own work up on its feet, exposed in front of an audience. Because when you write a play, it's meant to be performed. It's not meant to be read.
Yeah, exactly.
So you know that. So that's basically how how I entered the world of theater. And at the end of the run of that show at a little theater called the Turtle Shell Productions, the guy who I rented the theater from, who's become a good friend, John Cooper, said, hey, how about co-producing my next show with me? Okay. And it was not what I was looking to do, but I thought, well,
but it came to
why
you.
not? Right. And then a theater group that I was a member of as a writer, American Renaissance Theater Company, asked me to produce their reading series that spring. So the next thing I knew, I was suddenly, doing a lot of that type of work, enjoying it, developing experience in it. And at some point, basically 2 years ago or so, I just said, if I'm going to continue to do this, then I need to take it to another level because I mean, it's hard in all of these fields making a living. Right. But, like off Broadway is really, I mean, that's what I was doing initially just to get up on my feet. But now, we're looking to do things at a different level. Okay. So, so you got the quick panorama of my life.
Yeah, pretty good. You're pretty good telling stories, huh? You go from the beginning, middle, and the end. Now, what is? Maybe it's too general, but it came to my mind now. What's more difficult? How different is the, from TV, film to stage work? How do you feel about the different craft? Stage work is differently. Obviously, it's tickets are high. I don't care if it's Broadway or off Broadway. People are paying a lot of money to go to the theater. So it's like, how different is it from your experience on TV?
I mean, they're completely different in a lot of ways. The one thing, though, that I think was the parallel, or at least the thing that particularly grabs me between sports and theater, which is not two things that people normally think of, but sports television and theater are both primarily live activities, live performances, and I do think there's an adrenaline rush that's involved in it. There's something about when I'm in that theater, whether it's a show I wrote, whether it's a show I produced, whether it's a show I'm working on in some other capacity, there's something about that energy, there's something about the unknown, there's something about that excitement, and particularly there's something about being there with an audience reacting to it.
Right, there's nothing like it.
And there's really nothing like that. And in sports is kind of, sports is a different version of that. When you're at the event, there's obviously, whether it's, 10,000 or 80,000 people, depending on the sport and the arena, that are sharing that moment with you. So I think, even though I love film and I love a lot of other things about television, I do feel there's something about the live component that excites me just a little bit more. Right. Yeah.
Stage work, actors. How often do you go to the theater? How often do you go to see actors?
All the time.
Jeremy? All the time?
Yeah, I mean, because not only am I going to see shows because I enjoy seeing shows, but you're also going to readings of works that people are developing. You're also going to other theater-related events where there may be performances. You're also going to an awful lot of, events of a networking type nature within the business, so you're around it all the time. Now, sometimes, though, you're so busy, though, on a particular production that you
that you don't have time.
You just have to, you basically just shut the door.
Right.
And you got to do what you got to do, and you're up till 2 in the morning doing it. But,
right. There's a lot of off-Broadway production.